Good Friday evening to you. Hope your weekend is off to a good start. Welcome to More Sports and Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon, and we are pleased to be joined by Dan Labbe. He is Cleveland Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com. And Dan, it's the team that just keeps giving, our Cleveland Browns. So Myles Garrett reinstated by the league. Really, really good news. Not unexpected, but the fact that it got done so quickly is a good thing.
Yeah, and when he met with the league, recently, it kind of felt like this was going to come. And they wanted to get him back, I think, before OTAs started and the offseason program started. So the Browns are going to have him back for all of that. He'll be full go come April. And that's really, I think, what he and the organization wanted.
And we find out that this weekend, he will have a sit-down outside the lines with ESPN and talk in-depth about the situation. As they do, they released a little teaser of it, and, we heard he reiterated the claim that he made pretty much right away that, we had heard about, that he was called a racial epithet, the stupid N-word, as he referred to it, which, again, you could see where that might make someone snap.
Yeah, and, it was interesting. He sort of hesitated a little bit before he answered that question when Mina Kimes asked what Mason Rudolph said to him. And after the game, I was there in that scrum, and he didn't really want to get into it. It seemed like it was something that initially he wanted to keep under wraps. I remember after the appeal, it got leaked, and he didn't seem real happy about that. He felt like anything he said in that setting was going to remain private. Now, we kind of know how that works. Nothing is really private in this world. So he even felt a little bit uncomfortable that he was bringing it up in that setting. But, he doubled down on it. It's very telling that he said it again, and he got more specific this time around.
But and the other thing is again, he reiterated the fact that, he has a problem believing that nobody picked it up. He was told, with all the cameras and microphones and things that are on an NFL film, and you and I know that more than anybody, he said, they said it wasn't there, so, you figure that out.
Yeah, it was. He kind of went after the league a little bit, which surprised me because he did just get reinstated. So I was a little surprised that he did make the decision to go after the league and sort of call them out a little bit on the whole audio side of it. I mean, he knows, look, you usually have a couple offensive linemen mic'd up to pick up that snap count. The quarterback is usually mic'd up. Now, the way Myles explained it is, Mason Rudolph needed a different helmet that didn't have a microphone on it. The whole there is no audio thing was always a little... We all know how that works, right? The NFL is reality TV.
Exactly.
I can understand if, you say something like, well, we couldn't just pick anything up. Yeah, that would make sense. There's a lot of moving parts in that situation, but they got muffled audio and things like that.
They got very specific. We shut it down. We did this. We did that.
Yeah, and I do think there is some, look, they don't have a lot of stuff. They do shut that down at some point. And of course, the quarterback to coach communication is shut down at 15 seconds on the play clock. We don't hear that entire audio during the broadcast. Teams don't want that stuff going out. It's not audio that the league said. They told Mary Kay Cabot that they don't keep that audio. They just get rid of it. It's not recorded anywhere. Again, we know how this works. We see mic'd up segments. We see NFL films all the time. This was a Thursday night national TV game.
I see where division rivals.
Right. I see where Myles is going with this. But I did think it was a little, I'm not sure exactly why he wants to go after the NFL right after he got reinstated.
But the flip side of it is I was a little surprised how quickly the commissioner came out and said, he's suspended for the rest of the year. And that's the other part of this. If that comes out audio-wise, that's a problem.
Yeah, and that was the whole situation, right? This is on national TV, like we said. Had this happened on a Sunday at 1 o'clock, you do wonder if he gets an indefinite suspension. Maybe he gets suspended for the rest of the season, but just the language of indefinite suspension, right? Even though it just ended up being for the season. You wonder if the punishment is as strong if this happens at 3:30 on a Sunday afternoon, as opposed to, again, on Thursday Night Football, national TV, the closing seconds of the game. This wasn't even in the middle of the game. It was everybody was getting ready to tune out, and all of a sudden, it's in the spotlight, and it just blows up from there.
And the flip side of it is, why are the Steelers passing in that situation? But that's a whole different, and you could say the Browns defense did not recover from him not being there.
Yeah, and they were starting to get banged up too. Anyway, I mean, they just lost Morgan Burnett earlier in that game. You know, Jermaine Whitehead was gone already too for very different reasons. But you know, the defense was getting banged up. Myles Garrett had one of his best games. You know, he was all over Mason Rudolph in that game. He didn't put up big sack numbers, but he was all over him. You know, you knew he was trying to get one of those garbage time sacks. That's what all these guys are trying to do. I remember a play where Larry Ogunjobi got to Rudolph just a few seconds before Myles, and Myles kind of went like this afterwards, like, that was going to be my sack. He wanted one, and that sort of led to everything when he pulled Mason Rudolph down, and then Mason escalated it from there. So it was just an ugly situation, and really, you're right. I mean, the Steelers probably didn't need to be passing the ball there. I don't know what the thinking was behind that.
Well, you know, having said that, what type of impact does he have on this defense with the new defensive coordinator? I mean, I got to imagine any defensive coordinator wants, 95 of the Browns up front there.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that keeps offensive coordinators up at night and offensive line coaches up at night, because even when he's not getting sacks, he's getting push and he's getting pressure and he's moving the quarterback off of his spot and he's rushing the quarterback. He's making him throw the ball sooner. He's not great in the run game yet, but the scary thing with Myles is I think there's another level. We haven't seen him have game after game of like Aaron Donald impact, right? When you watch the Rams, there's some games where you just see 99 all day. And we haven't seen that as much with Myles. And the next level with him is you're going to watch on Sundays and you're just going to notice 95 on every single play in the backfield impacting the game.
And guys like that tend to make guys next to them and behind them that much better.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. I mean, we saw it when he was out. All of a sudden they're going with Porter Gustin and Brandon Bryant and guys that we've never heard of, and Olivier Vernon was out as well, and it just changed the pass rush. And that's how this team was built. This team was built to create pressure. That's what they spent their money on. That's what they put their resources towards. Create pressure, make everything else easier through that. That's how you win in the NFL, is pressure, and Myles Garrett is the start of that.
Well, we're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. When we return, we'll talk a little bit about some players, free agent targets that the Browns may take a look at to improve the roster. Dan Labbe, the Browns beat reporter from cleveland.com. Dave Bacon. We'll be right back on More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Stay with us.
Presque Isle Downs and Casino has sports betting. Use one of our 50 state-of-the-art Bet America kiosks to place your bet and watch your favorite games on one of our many HD televisions, or visit our sportsbook area. Only at Presque Isle Downs and Casino.
As a kid growing up, my dream was to go to college, play baseball, and get a degree. Coming out of high school, I had two choices. I was accepted into a four-year university, but I decided to come to Tri-C after receiving a scholarship. I got my associate's degree at Tri-C. They transferred all my credits straight into Baldwin-Wallace, so I started at Baldwin-Wallace University as a junior. My name is Tyler Leonard, and I earned my first degree at Tri-C.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Dave Bacon, joined by cleveland.com's Browns beat reporter Dan Labbe. And Dan, we talked a little bit about Myles Garrett being back. Now roster upgrade, and pretty good roster, much better than it has been in the past. Safeties is an area that the Browns obviously they were a little gray in the tooth and probably not getting as much production. Is that an area you think they may look to in free agency?
I think they have to. Demarius Randall is headed for free agency. I mentioned Morgan Burnett got hurt. He suffered a torn Achilles, so who knows? He was going to be a free agent too, so who knows what he's going to be able to do this year. You've got Sheldrick Redwine, who we didn't see a whole lot of at the end of the year, so we don't know what he can do. So I think there's some guys out there that kind of match what this team needs. You look at Minnesota, where, of course, Kevin Stefanski came from. Anthony Harris could be available. Maybe that's a guy you go after. One name that I'm intrigued by is Justin Simmons in Denver, a really nice young safety. Now, they might franchise tag him. They kind of hang their hat on their defense. They have a young quarterback, so they want to have a really good defense. But I'll keep an eye on him because he played for Joe Woods when Joe Woods was the defensive coordinator in Denver for those 2 years. So I would keep an eye on him too if he even makes it to free agency and doesn't get tagged.
When you speak about Joe Woods and the defense, what do you expect to see? I mean, what will the Browns' defense look like? Will it be drastically different, do you think? Will it be similar? Or?
I don't think it'll be drastically different. I think it's going to come down to, again, creating that pressure. When he was in Denver, he had a guy like Von Miller. He had Bradley Chubb for that 1 year. I think he wants to create pressure. That's where it always starts on defense. And look, if you can create pressure with that front four, with those guys, he knows how to work with guys like that. And I think they have the ability to do that, especially when you add in Larry Ogunjobi and Sheldon Richardson in the middle. Those four guys should be able to create pressure and hopefully then from there you can force some turnovers. And the other good thing is you've got at least one corner in Denzel Ward that can shut guys down. If Greedy Williams can get better, then you've got two really nice corners, and you can really do something if you add some safeties.
And, we'll get back to the free agents in a minute, but you mentioned Larry Ogunjobi. That's a guy who's, people thought would take this big step up. He probably was as adversely affected by Myles Garrett not lining up next to him as anybody.
Yeah, I think so. And
all of a sudden, you're the guy everybody's focusing on.
Yeah, and he's a guy that, Sheldon Richardson can be a little bit of a run stopper, even though he's kind of that defensive tackle that gets in the backfield too. But Ogunjobi is, he wants to get in the backfield and get to the quarterback. And he didn't make a huge leap this year. I thought he was fine. He was good enough. But he didn't make a huge leap, and he's a guy that's going to be headed to free agency soon too, and he's going to want to get paid a lower round pick, not a low round pick, but a mid round pick, and he's going to have a big year this year if he wants to get paid.
What do you? So we talk safeties. Who else do you think are some guys that keep your ear out for, as the Browns look towards this free agency class?
I think on the other side of the ball, a name that I'm seeing a lot of people bring up is Austin Hooper from the Falcons. He's a tight end, and this team needs to get better at the tight end position. Who knows what David Njoku can do? Demetrius Harris was a disappointment. I mean, they let Darren Fells walk, and he scored 7 touchdowns for Houston this year. They could have used that sort of production. Ricky Seals-Jones got banged up, and he was okay, but not great. They just need some consistent production from the tight end position because they're going to go heavy on tight ends this year. They're going to have 2 tight ends on the field a lot. They're going to use a fullback a lot. So that's another area to keep an eye on too is the fullback position, or they could address that in the draft. But I'm really keeping an eye on who's out there at the tight end position. Austin Hooper is a guy that has caught the football, been in high-scoring offenses, the type of tight end that you want.
Another name that you hear is Hunter Henry, and again,
that's
Chargers may get a franchise because he's at one point he was thought to be the next young superstar, and he's been okay.
Yeah, and he's dealt everybody with the Chargers deals with injuries, right? And they're going to be breaking in a new quarterback. Could be a guy that we know, Tyrod Taylor. But if you're going to have Tyrod Taylor as your quarterback, you better have a tight end that can catch the football because he likes to dump it off and not necessarily always look down the field.
It's kind of interesting because we've talked. The Browns really didn't have an offensive identity, which, when you think of all the skill that they had, it's hard to believe. And one of the things that it's, tight ends better be able to not only catch the ball, but they better be willing to block.
Yeah, they've got to be willing to block. And, they might not all be George Kittle, but, they've got to be able to be decent blockers and open up running lanes, keep your quarterback clean, all of that stuff. And then, look, if David Njoku can step up and make some catches, whoever they add can step up and make a few catches here and there, it's just going to make Baker Mayfield's life easier.
Any other areas that you think to kind of keep an eye on as far as free agent or names? We've mentioned
you've always got to keep an eye on the tackles, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Jack Conklin maybe hits free agency, maybe he's a guy. I don't think the Colts are going to let somebody like Anthony Costanzo go, but who knows? Maybe he ends up out there in free agency and the Browns make a run at somebody like that. You just have to always keep an eye on people like that. I'm curious if Andrew Perry's going to be aggressive in the trade market. John Dorsey was very aggressive in the trade market. I think it was somewhere Sashi Brown was going, sort of that NBA style of team building where maybe bring on a big contract to collect a draft asset, something like that. Get active in the trade market, build through trades. John Dorsey did it. I think Andrew Berry is maybe going to want to do that as well.
The flip side of one of the things that you have to do is you can't necessarily always get the younger guys because by the time they're ready to contribute at the level you need them to, if you're a really good team, you've got a year or two, and then you got to pay them big.
Yeah, that too. And I also think if you're looking at players as you look through free agent lists, look at their age, look at their contract status. This team's not going to be in the business, I don't think, of signing guys who are on the wrong side of 30. They're going to want to sign guys like a few years ago when they let Mitchell Schwartz walk to Kansas City. They're going to want to make that kind of signing. They're going to want to sign a guy who's younger, going into his second contract, ready to get paid, and still has probably 4 to 5 years of really quality production left.
Do you think the free agency market will give you an idea of exactly what they're thinking draft-wise? And you have to kind of marry the two of those because that's how you upgrade your roster. Allegedly a very deep draft for tackles, which good thing for the Browns.
Yeah, and I would think that if they had their way, they would probably want to address tackle in the draft instead of paying a ton of money in the draft. They already have a lot of money invested in their offensive line. So if they're kind of looking at that, maybe they want to bring in a younger guy who's going to be cheaper. The other thing, though, is what if, I think we mentioned this last week, what if Isaiah Simmons is sitting there at number 10, right? That linebacker, safety hybrid, kind of that next generation of defender. What if he's sitting there at 10? If you sign a guy in free agency who can play tackle, that gives you a little more flexibility at number 10 to just take the best player available. So I think they're going to address tackle in the draft at some point, but it wouldn't surprise me if they signed a guy too.
Well, the Browns did add somebody to the front office as well. We will talk a little bit about the front office structure coming up on More Sports and Less Levine. Dan Labbe, cleveland.com's Browns beat reporter Dave Bacon. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll take a look at the Browns front office structure as they get ready to kind of build on this roster, the new regime here. More Sports, Less Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. We'll be right back.
Celebrate Naturestone's 30-year anniversary with a free Naturestone floor. During 2020, we will be giving away 30 free floors to 30 very lucky customers to say thank you for making Naturestone the best concrete flooring solution for garages, basements, and more. Call or visit Naturestone.com today to register to win, and we'll send you a copy of our new buyer's guide absolutely free. There's no purchase necessary. Winners will be chosen monthly. With over 30 million square feet installed for more than 60,000 customers, it's easy to see why I always say, it's not just a floor, wow, it's Naturestone.
Just because I'm not $1 million price doesn't mean I'm worthless. We middle prices get zero respect. We're worth hundreds, even thousands. I mean, I'm a handsome bag of money. And there's $110 million worth of us in the Ohio Lottery Cash Celebration scratch-off alone. Plus, the odds of winning are off the chart. 1 in 3.
Play the $30 cash celebration for a chance to win up to $1 million.
You see?
Oh, and lots of prizes between $100 and $1,000.
Everybody wants $1 million. Would $500 be so bad? Come on.
There are tastes we remember. Every smell brings the happiness of times gone by. Experience this every time you walk into Gallucci's Italian Foods. Whether you need lunch on the go, a catered party, or that perfect blend of wine, meats, and cheeses, Gallucci's has exactly what you're looking for. Straight from Mama's Kitchen for old world traditions or original experiences. From the tastes you remember to new flavors you'll never forget. Gallucci's is a tasty branch of your family tree.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
More sports and Les Levine. The Weekend Winners Edition continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We're going to shift gears, talk a little bit about the Browns front office. Dan Labbe, Cleveland Browns beat reporter here on cleveland.com. And so, Dan, do you want the good news or the bad news first? Are you good news first?
You know what? Let's do the good news.
The good news first is Ryan Grigson, who the Browns have added as a consultant. Not a full-time gig yet, probably will become one. The good news is he was GM for the Colts for 4 years. They were 11-5. 3 consecutive 11-5. Good. That's the good. Now, do you want to know the bad news?
I guess.
You already know where I'm going with this. He's also the guy that thought it was a good idea for the Colts to trade a first-round pick for Trent Richardson. So there you go.
Not a real popular guy in Indianapolis, honestly, if you kind of do a little research on him. And but a guy that Andrew Berry knows well. And, you want some more bad news. He was also here in a similar role when the Browns put together that 1-31 stretch, which I know people might hear that and say, well, that's what they were trying to do and whatever else. But he was still a part of that front office then. It felt like the Browns were kind of throwing him a lifeline back then after he was recently fired by the Colts. And, Chris Ballard was brought in to sort of save that organization and try and save Andrew Luck's career, which didn't work out. Look, nobody should really get too excited, I think, about Ryan Grigson. I also don't know how big of a role he's going to have in all of this, but this is a weird one. In an offseason that I think you can talk yourself into and feel really good about. This one's a little bizarre.
I mean, the one thing is it does add a guy who has been a GM, has been a GM on a team that's been a playoff team. So, and again, you kid about, the Trent Richardson trade. Anybody who's been in any professional organization for a while has one of those that you go, ooh, that didn't work out. But that's a pretty big one, and Browns fans know, from the being on the good end of it, know how bad that was.
Well, and you mentioned those winning seasons, right? And still, Indianapolis Colts fans, couldn't wait to run him out of town. And he was sort of a laughingstock might be a strong word, but he wasn't really a popular guy as far as, nobody was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they got rid of Ryan Grigson and went in a different direction. So that kind of concerns you when a guy has that kind of success, but still isn't necessarily your long-term solution as your general manager. You do ask yourself, is this team better with Ryan Grigson, or would they have been better off? And who knows if it could have worked, keeping a guy like Elliott Wolf in the building, Alonzo Highsmith. Those are the types of people that kind of got run out in this, and now you're bringing in Ryan Grigson. I guess we'll see.
I think it speaks to, Jimmy Haslam wanting alignment. He wants everybody, and again, as long as the dissenting voice is not, divisive, dissension's pretty good. You want that hard discussion in that conversation. If it gets to be where, back channeling and then it, and from all indications, that must have been what was going on in Berea, because they're going to the, way opposite end of making sure everybody's in lockstep.
Yeah, and Jimmy Haslam kind of said it without saying it when he talked after Andrew Berry's press conference that he didn't. Well, he just kind of said it without saying it. It was kind of hard to get exactly what he meant, but it sounded like there were some things going on behind the scenes, and that was the most public he had been with it. And now you've kind of got what's interesting is, with Paul DePodesta in charge, he's sort of put together most of the front office that they put together back in 2016, minus, of course, Sashi Brown, who's working for the Washington Wizards right now. But this front office all of a sudden looks very similar to what it was before John Dorsey arrived.
Yeah, which that's very interesting. The thing is, and again, because you have DePodesta, who is not a football guy, I think you add another football, and Grigson, he was in several organizations. So that's a guy that has worked with other people in other organizations. Barry, has been in a couple of organizations, a few. So again, I think you need the football guys to kind of say, okay, these numbers say this, but are you looking at it in terms of, are you getting at what the numbers really say?
Yeah, I mean, these guys are going to spend most of their lives sitting in that draft war room here between now and the draft, and they're going to be watching tape on these guys. And along with all the testing data and anything else that you're using, you've got to be able to look at the tape and say, yeah, this works. Everything lines up. Everything these numbers are telling us matches what we're seeing on film. And you've got to be able to watch that tape and know what you're watching. And I certainly think Andrew Berry does. I think Ryan Gregson does as well. They have a strong scouting department. Some guys that were here before, guys that were leftovers from the John Dorsey era. And I think that's one thing that kind of stands out. Andrew Berry spent a year in Philadelphia, but before that, he spent a year with John Dorsey, who is a scout's scout. Even though he held the GM title, I mean, that guy is as old school a scout as you can be. And Andrew Berry mentioned it in his press conference, spending that year with John Dorsey, learning that Ron Wolf style of scouting, where you scout the number one pick the same as you scout a guy that's going to go undrafted. I think that's going to help inform how Andrew Berry approaches this.
Well, and again, the data is great and informed decisions are great. But at the end of the day, you're playing football. You're not running an obstacle course against a clock. I mean, that's what there's got to be that context.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go to the combine here in a couple weeks, and what do people like to call it? The underwear Olympics, right? I mean, you take information from that. Somebody can run an impressive 40 time. A guy like John Ross runs this super impressive 40 time, tests really well. But then he gets out on the football field and it hasn't quite clicked. Yeah. DK Metcalf, ran a great 40 time, but then you see all this stuff coming out about, his 3-cone shuttle was the same as Tom Brady's, and you start to get worried about it. But a team like Seattle brings him in, puts him in the exact right role for him. And he has a great rookie season. And now there's all kinds of untapped potential there with a guy like that. So it is really about taking all that testing data, all those numbers that you're pulling from college stats and whatever else, and marrying it with what you're watching on film. And being able to bring a guy in like a DK Metcalf and say, we're going to bring you in, and we want you to just run really fast down the field and be bigger and stronger and faster than everybody. And we're going to make that work.
And when we're running, knock somebody down.
Yeah. And then listen, in the offseason here, we need you to learn to hold on to the football a little bit better, but everything else was great.
When you look at it does appear that they're trying to get football guys who are open to quote-unquote analytics. So they want to make as football guys who want to use as much information as possible to make their decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're after. At least that's been their message is, when you're making a decision, don't just use this data, use all this information, don't just keep it off to the side or give it a passing glance. We really want to use it. We really want to make it drive what we do. And on the football field as well, when you're facing a 4th down or you're deciding to go for 2, we've got all this information available to us that shows us what the best decision is. At least use that to inform your decision. Sometimes you got to go on gut feel a little bit, like the game situation and things like that, but at least have more information and be willing to use it.
Are more and more teams doing that? I mean, I know it's easier to do. I think we had this discussion last week. It's easier to do in baseball because it's not as different. There's not 22 guys on the field. You're looking pitch, location, speed, and it's easier to do with basketball because of the same reason. There's only 5 on each team.
Yeah, and the sample size is so much longer, right? 162 games, if you follow analytics, it's all going to even out, right? Over the course of 162. In football, it's 16 games. It's, the playoffs are 1 game, right? You've got to have the ability to be in a situation and understand what a decision means, even if you're going against what data, what information is telling you. You've got to be able to understand that. But that being said, I think it can work. I think it can be applied, but there's got to be a mix.
Dan Labbe, we appreciate the time. As always, he is the beat reporter, Cleveland Browns, here on cleveland.com. You can read him in the pages of the Plain Dealer. Check him out online as well. Dan Labbe, as always, appreciate the time. Thanks very much.
For having me.
We got to take a time out. When we return, we'll preview the XFL Week 2 here on More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Stay with us.
As a kid growing up, my dream was to go to college, play baseball, and get a degree. Coming out of high school, I had 2 choices. I was accepted into a 4-year university, but I decided to come to Tri-C after receiving a scholarship. I got my associate's degree at Tri-C. They transferred all my credits straight into Baldwin-Wallace, so I started at Baldwin-Wallace University as a junior. My name is Tyler Leonard, and I earned my first degree at Tri-C.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
It takes attention to detail. With your local Bryant dealer, you're getting more than just a technician. You're getting someone who pays attention to your needs and the little things that make a big difference. It takes a dealer you can rely on. And to keep your family warm this winter,
here, let me show you how this works.
It takes Bryant.
Bryant. Whatever it takes.
And to keep your family comfortable, it takes Smiley One Heating and Cooling. Find them at SmileyOne.com.
Welcome back to More Sports and Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. I'm Dave Bacon. Time to talk a little bit about Presque Isle Downs and Casino in Erie, Pennsylvania. Just a little bit over an hour away from downtown Cleveland, right off of I-90 in Erie, Pennsylvania. 27 miles into Pennsylvania. Presque Isle Downs and Casino. It's the home of the Bet America Sportsbook. They have 50 state-of-the-art kiosks located throughout their casino, some of them right inside the door. And the Bet America sports kiosks, the Bet America touchscreen betting. You go in, touch a few screens, put your money in, get your bet slip, and you're good to go. That's at Presque Isle Downs and Casino, Erie, Pennsylvania, a little over an hour away from downtown Cleveland, 27 miles into Pennsylvania, right off of I-90, the Bet America Sportsbook touchscreen betting. It's really easy to do, and it's a pretty easy drive from downtown Cleveland as well. Week 2 of the XFL, and let's take a look at some of the games. The 1-0 DC Defenders, 7-point favorites over the New York Guardians. DC looked pretty good with former Ohio State and Glenville quarterback Cardale Jones getting it done. The second game on Saturday, the Tampa Bay Vipers are taking on Seattle. Seattle, an upset winner, and Matt Jones, former Redskin, was the XFL's leading rusher in Week 1, had 85 yards in Seattle's win as the Dragons, one of the few teams to run the ball, as they ran the ball pretty effectively in their win. The Dallas Renegades, 4-point road favorites against the LA Wildcats. LA struggled in Week 1. And the late game on Sunday, the Houston Roughnecks, 8-point favorites at home. And P.J. Walker was the XFL Star of the Week quarterback for the Roughnecks. He threw for 272 yards and 4 touchdown passes. P.J. Walker looked pretty good for the Houston Roughnecks. That'll do it for this edition of More Sports, Les Levine, the Weekend Winners Edition. Want to remind you, Presque Isle Downs and Casino, a little bit over an hour away from downtown Cleveland. It is in Erie, Pennsylvania, right off of I-90, 27 miles into the state of Pennsylvania. It's the home of the Bet America Sportsbook, 50 state-of-the-art Bet America sports kiosks located throughout the casino, some right inside the casino door. Run in, touch a few buttons, put your money in, make your bet, you're good to go. Again, it's Presque Isle Downs and Casino in Erie, Pennsylvania, a little over an hour away from downtown Cleveland, right off of I-90. That'll do it for this edition of More Sports and Les Levine. We'll see you again next Friday. And remember, Les Levine back in the chair on Monday from 6 to 7. Have a great week, everyone.